everyone! So in today's video, I'm going to go over my garden book collection that I have. Majority are garden related, some are more houseplant specific, but I would say in the last year or two, I've kind of gotten addicted to grabbing garden books wherever I go, especially if they're from like a thrift store. So right now, I'm trying to stop myself from bringing any more books into the house until I get through all the ones that I already have, but I actually am about to get even more from a friend, so we'll kind of see how it goes. But I'll go through everything I have. I would say maybe like a third I've actually read or started reading, and 2/3 I haven't. So the ones that I have read, I will let you know what I think, and then I'll just share all of them though anyway. So I figure we should probably start with the ones that I'm currently reading. So I always feel like I'm kind of going through 2 books at a time. One that's probably a bit more intense to read and one that is maybe a little quicker of a read. But I've had this on my nightstand for a while. So this is a biography of Bunny Mellon, and it's called I'll Build a Stairway to Paradise. Now, I don't know how I first heard of Bunny Mellon. It was in the last, I'd say, 6 months, but she is, I believe, a self-taught horticulturalist, and she actually designed the rose garden at the White House, and she has like beautiful gardens. She's passed now. I think she lived to be over 100, but she has beautiful gardens that are not currently open to the public, because I did Google that. I think they let some like horticulture students in there, but they haven't been open to the public. But she was also either born a millionaire or billionaire, so I think having that much money definitely helps in creating beautiful gardens. But I would love to one day, if they kind of ever open up her estate, to visit the gardens there. But I've gotten through a little bit under halfway, and it's basically just a biography of her life. A lot of it isn't necessarily specifically about the gardening part of her life, because there's a good chunk of her life that isn't just garden related, but it is interesting just to learn about, I don't know, some of the people that are more well-known kind of in the gardening world. It is something where like if I hear a name, I'll kind of take a screenshot of that person so that sometime I can either like watch a YouTube video on them or find a book on them if there's one available. So I have one on Bunny Mellon. Now this one, the I'll Build a Stairway to Paradise, was just published I think in 2022. So I saw this new one because I had ordered this book on Bunny Mellon, which is called The Life of an American Style Legend. It was by a New York Times bestselling author, but it's about Bunny Mellon's life. I have not read this one yet. So what happened was I got this one, and then I saw there was another one coming out, and I think this one was actually written by a friend of her daughter. So I started with this one. I'll then move on to this one, and will I be reading like pretty much the same thing? I'm not sure yet, but we'll kind of see how it goes. But this is kind of where I'm like, okay, I don't need 2 books necessarily on the same person, so maybe I should finish a book and then get another one instead of just ordering 2 at the same time, but we'll see how that goes. So 2 books on Bunny Mellon. The other category of books that I'm reading right now, and I did kind of split what I have into different categories, is I have 3 books that are kind of like monthly books, which I really like because especially in the winter when there's not a lot of gardening to do, I can kind of read like January or winter related chapters of books. So these books I don't read all in one sitting. Just at some point during the month, usually towards the beginning, I'll sit down and kind of read the chapters from the books that are related to the different months. So the first one that I kind of got from this genre that I've read almost all of, because I got it maybe in spring of last year, is The Curious Gardener, A Year in the Garden, and it's by Anna Pavord. And I have another book of hers too. I'm hopefully pronouncing all of these names correctly. But this one, so let me open it up here. Also, a side note, I love when books have these strings in them for the bookmarks instead of me having to find a bookmark and use it on the page. But basically, there are chapters like this that start off for every month. And it's very specific to like her garden and things she's done. But at the end, and she's somewhere in England, I believe, so the growing zone isn't too far off from me, but near the end of the chapters, there is kind of a task list. So this is the one for February tasks of the month, and some of these, as I'm reading them, I'm like, oh, I actually could stand to do that this month. So things like prune late flowering clematis, winter prune wisteria, feed herbaceous borders, prune winter flowering jasmine. So not that I have all of these start to sow annuals, but I do kind of go off this list and see if there is anything that I can do around the same time. Again, I think her growing zone is relatively similar to mine, maybe like one warmer. So it does work pretty well in parallel to mine. So this is one book that I read a chapter a month. Another one, which I just started this year, is called The Country Diary of an Edwardian Lady by Edith Holder. And this one is actually like a reprint or repurpose of her diary. Again, I have like some facts on who these people actually are. I think she was an artist specifically of children's books, which is why the drawings in here are so beautiful. So it is just like her own garden journal that was reprinted. I think it was in the early 1900s when the journal was first created by her. But she'll have drawings of like different flowers, label what they are. She'll have some of her own writing describing what's going on, and then there's also a lot of either excerpts of other like garden-related writing or poems, and then it'll quote who that's by. But I think this is really beautiful, and it's kind of something I want to mimic, although the drawings won't be the same, but I want to keep a journal of my garden, and not just one where like, because I do a good job of recording, like here's what I'm planting every year, here's where I start to plant, here's where they planted, but I want something that's more like I'll just sit outside, draw something that looks pretty, write some notes, kind of write whatever I'm feeling in the moment and have that to look back on. But I really love this one, and I even might, I feel like I keep showing you the same photo. Let me show you some other photos in here, but some of the photos are so pretty. Like I even think it would be fun if I wanted to, I could just scan it or tear pages out of the book. Even like frame some of these drawings I think would be pretty to do. So yeah, I have to decide if I actually want to take any of the pages out of the book or not to frame. But that is something too that I like to do, because prints can be kind of not super expensive, but more expensive than if you get like a really old book with pretty drawings from a bookstore, antique store, thrift store, and just tear out the pages and then frame them yourself. So that is another one of my, again, chapter a month books, and then I think I've shown this before, but this is called Grow Curious, and this is a garden journal that I got in Madison, Wisconsin when we were up there for a wedding. And so it has a whole section, it isn't split up by month, but more by season, but a whole section for activities that you can do in the garden. So let me see if I can just find, so like this is just something, a fantasy wish list. When I was a kid, arrival of catalog, blah, blah, didn't have the money, blah, blah. So it says like choose a seed catalog and play the gardener's version of a fantasy wish fulfillment game. Flip through page by page and make a selection from each page or spread based entirely on desire. Set aside all practicalities of the real world and imagine a fantasy scenario in which you have unlimited space and money, maybe like Bunny Mellon did, and the growing conditions were always magically ideal. And so I think that's just kind of interesting to see, especially now in the winter when we are thinking about planting our garden. Like obviously I have to make decisions based on what realistically will work here, but to just spend some time kind of dreaming about what you could have if you had all of the money, all of the space, whatever weather you needed for the plant. So yeah, this has been really fun. I got this last summer too, so I don't know if any of these books I've had for a full year yet, but I did get The Curious Gardener first, but I think I'm just gonna continue like doing the activities again year after year, reading the same chapters again year after year, and I think that'll just be really fun. So I really liked those type of books that are again kind of split out month over month, especially during the winter time when I need to get outside and it's snowy and freezing. Next, I think I'm gonna go into what I call my like thrifted or older book selection, although I don't know if they're all necessarily older, but I've gotten them more from like bookstores or thrift stores versus like Amazon or newer releases. So most of the books I say I have gotten Amazon, well maybe that's not true, but most of the ones that I purchased not in a bookstore are from Amazon. Then I get some from like gift stores, the Botanic Garden, any just regular bookstores. I'll go to the garden section, which is where the majority of these are from. So the first book is a houseplant book, and this is called Every Room a Garden. It's from the 1970s, How to Decorate Your Home with Plants. And this one, I think is one of the first kind of thrifted books I got. And that's what made me fall in love with kind of the older books. I was wondering, you know, how much has changed, how much would apply, you know, 50 years later, but a lot of it is still pretty much the same. And I love like the, I guess snarky would be the right word of this book. It's like a very sarcastically written book, which I can appreciate. So one of the things they mentioned in the book was like, why would you have all your propagations just strewn about in jars when you could actually make them look pretty? And right next to me was a bunch of my jars strewn about with propagations in it. So it is just kind of like, I don't know, a tongue-in-cheek book about decorating your home with houseplants. But there were also some really unique ideas that I'd never really thought of before. And then in the center section here, so where the pages are green, this is actually like a little glossary of the plants. So here on 184 is pothos, which is also behind me. One thing I want to do this year is get better at saying like the scientific name. So Scindapsus aureus. It does have like the pronunciations written out there too. So hopefully I said that right. It says this plant, also known as devil's ivy, is often confused with philodendron, which there are also some in there as well. Their leaves look alike and their vining habits are similar. It's as easy to grow as philodendron. In fact, it's a better performer in lower light. Its heart-shaped waxy green leaves don't diminish in size as do the philodendrons in low light situations. The main thing to watch out for is overwatering. So yeah, I think this is just a really cool book to have on hand. I've read through, I think, all of this already, but it's been a while. But yeah, there were some really fun craft ideas that I don't think I would have necessarily thought of doing before. And I absolutely love like all of the more scientific stuff in here too. So yeah, it's really cool. I really like it. I have no idea if you'll be able to find it because again, I just picked it up at a thrift store. So, but maybe they do have something like this on Amazon or the same book. So yeah, is Every Room a Garden. And then these next three I just recently got because we went to a bookstore that was having a really good sale and I went directly to their garden section, which wasn't very large, but I did have to put probably about half of the books back that I wanted to take because I knew that I didn't need that many. So the first one here is called Quick and Easy Container Water Gardens. And there's nothing on the front, it just says it on the side. I'm really excited about this. I haven't read any of these yet. Because I want to create a water container garden this year. It's probably, I'd say on the back deck where I sit more often because that's where the couch is, because I think the sound of running water would be really nice. So just either in like a pot or a half barrel type of situation, creating some container garden I think would be really fun, or water container garden. So this one is actually kind of up next on my need to read list. Then there was a book called Container Gardening. So I knew I had to get this. And that front picture is just full of flowers I love. There's a ton of petunias on there. So when I saw this, I was like, yes, I would like to do whatever they did here. Again, have not read this one yet, but it seems a lot of like a how-to book and giving you some different planting ideas. So I think that'll be really nice to go through. And then after I saw container gardening, I saw city gardening. And since I container garden in a city, I had to get this one as well. So this was the last one I got. Again, these aren't very long, so these will kind of be the easy read that I also have on my nightstand while I'm going through like the biographies. But yeah, these will give me some ideas for like plants that work really well in smaller spaces, mini climates, which I'm very interested in because I definitely feel like I have a mini climate going on my balcony. But even if I feel like, so I've been gardening in the city now for 4 years. Not that I know everything, but even if I feel like I know a lot, I always get so many ideas from other gardening books. I mean, I feel like every time I read something, I'm like, oh, I need to do that, I need to do this. So I'm excited to go through all these. Again, these are probably gonna be like my next up in terms of books that I need to go through. So I'll move those over here. Which pile should I do next? You know what, I'll kind of do the more like DIY / craft / recipe type books, and most of these are newer And I think I've gotten them more from not necessarily book-specific stores, but like gift stores that also have books in them. The first one that I have already read is Living with Flowers, and this is by Rowan Blossom, who has the perfect last name for a person who works with flowers. I actually follow her on Instagram too, and this has given me a lot of good information on how to, like, things that you need to create bouquets, ideas for how to create bouquets. I haven't done much of it yet because being a bouquet creator kind of hasn't fit in with all of my scheduling and what I want to do right now, but I think this is really great for kind of once I think this room is done and I have all my supplies up here and I have my work table, I do want to get more into actually making bouquets that look really pretty, and this book is going to come in handy. So these books kind of in this pile are books that I'm going to reference regularly because there's either like recipes or how-to with steps that you're going to follow. This is relatively new too. Natural Cures and Remedies, and this is the kitchen cupboard recipes and solutions for your health and home. So after taking my herbalism course online, I really wanted to learn more about specifically what herbs to use in different situations. Like if I have an upset stomach, what's a good like tea to make with certain herbs, or if I'm feeling like tired, what's something that's more energetic versus something that might make me a little sleepier. So just learning more about what herbs actually do, like what the different herbs do and how I can use them. This one also does have like how to create like sprays or oils with the different herbs as well. So yeah, there's just more of like a recipe layout in this book, which I really like. I read through some of them. Again, it's not a book you like sit down and read front to back, but I have marked some of the things that I want to do in there, similar to here. So this is a lavender cookbook. I really do like lavender, and so I thought, why not get a whole cookbook that talks about different ways to use it? And I actually, funny enough, saw this book at the bookstore where I got that last pile. And I was like, hey, I already have that, and I probably paid more than I would have here. But this one, as you can see, I've already marked off. So there's like vanilla. There's lavender cookies, lavender brownies, lavender bread, lavender hot cocoa, lavender sugar, which is really easy, and I need to make that so I can just add that on to anything that I might be eating. But yeah, I'm really excited about this book. Again, one that I'm referencing more often and not like a sit down and read book. Next is one I've already read completely, and this is the Wild Tea book. I talked about this, I think, last year. I got this from the Chicago Botanic Garden, and it just has a bunch of different, well, it has kind of two different things. One, it's kind of like a glossary that talks about different plants and how you can use them in tea, and then it has a bunch of like tea recipes. Oh, there's also a lavender sugar recipe in here too. Maybe this is a sign that I need to make some lavender sugar. So this book is very tea specific with a bunch of plants just related to teas and tea recipes. And since I do love tea, but again, just as much as I love coffee, I thought this book would be really nice to get. And I have read through everything in here and kind of know which ones I want to go back and look at, but love this book. Then I have two more crafting books that I got. I think both these are from the Botanic Garden too, or at least the second one is. But this is Crafting with Herbs, Do It Yourself. There's some stuff in here that is like creating room sprays and stuff similar to the other one. A lot of it is like creating, here for example, like rosemary and sage holiday centerpiece. So not necessarily things you're just going to ingest, but things that look pretty as well. So wreaths, I think they probably have, natural confetti with paper cone that I marked in case I want to make that for like a garden party or some other event. They have smudge sticks. So this is, even though they do have edible ideas, it's more non-edible herb crafts. And then last, I have The Wild Craft, and I follow her on Instagram too. And so in here, again, this is more like garden DIYs, making a birdhouse. I think I made, was it in here that I made a lemongrass ring to put in tea. I can't remember if it was in this book or the last one. But this I definitely want to do is make some botanical cookies. So I think I'm set on craft books. I don't think I need any more. That doesn't mean I'm not going to get any more, but I have a good stack here. And then my last stack of books, actually before I move on to the last pile, I almost forgot about this book, but I got this from the Chicago Excellence in Gardening Awards. So when you went to the ceremony, they gave everyone a bag with, you know, like some freebies and stuff in it, and every bag also got a garden book that was donated. And you didn't know which one you were getting. It was just in the bag you happened to grab, and I got this one, which I really like. So this is High Grove, an experiment in organic gardening and farming. Basically, it is the gardens of, well, who at the time was Prince Charles, now King Charles, and it just shows pictures of the garden and descriptions there. So this is really nice. I've read through a little bit of it. I think this is probably one of the books that I'll leave like out on a coffee table and just kind of sit and skim through. Again, not necessarily one to sit down and read like all at once, but a really nice coffee table book. So I was definitely happy when I opened my bag and saw this book in there. Now on to my last stack, which, I don't know, maybe I'll just call this one like miscellaneous. I don't know, you know what? This one I think I also got at that used bookstore that we were just at. A Handful of Herbs. So this is inspiring ideas for gardening, cooking, and decorating your home with herbs. So I have even more DIY herbs, but I think this one is more specifically going over, like in detail, the different herbs that you can grow, you know, not specifically ones for tea, not a ton of like making wreaths, but just the details on the herbs, how to grow them in your garden, how to make beautiful beds using your herbs. And I do want to kind of incorporate more herbs into my pots this year. I'm still gonna have my own separate herb garden rack that I had last year, but I do want to grow more of the ones that aren't quite as invasive into my raised beds. They do have some here like lip balm, vinegar bath, foot bath that you can make, but it's not the bulk of the book. So I think I'm going to move you to the herb pile. Then I have 3 more books. So this is the other one by Anna Pavord. So she's the one that did The Curious Gardener that has the monthly chapters. It's called The Tulip. I saw that it said on the, I think on the cover, let me see here. Yeah, it says Anna Pavord, author of The Tulip. So I was like, I will get The Tulip. So I got it. It seems, not read it yet, but it seems like a very, very detailed book all about the history of the tulip, which I think will be a good read. It'll probably be a slower read for me, kind of like the biography where it's just a lot of information to get through, a lot of like more historical facts on tulips too, but even like look at that pretty image. I could definitely frame that. But again, try not to tear out all of the pages of my book. So yeah, this is one that I kind of have on my list, but not like urgently going to read through it. Then I have The Well-Gardened Mind, and I think this might be one of the more recent books I got. I have not started this one yet, but this is more of how like nature impacts our well-being, which since starting my horticulture classes, that is something that is definitely discussed in those classes too. So I thought it would be nice to just read more about it. And it's something that I think a lot about living in a city, especially for children too, where when I grew up in the suburb, you know, it was easy for me to like run outside into our backyard, but here a lot of people don't have backyards. I'm really lucky to have the outdoor decks that I have now, but the first 4 years I was here, no outdoor space in my apartment, and I can really tell the difference between when I am able to get time outdoors versus when I'm not. And I can also feel a difference too, like just kind of walking around the sidewalks here versus driving out a little bit farther from the city and actually spending some time hiking through the woods. So yeah, I definitely want to read about this and connecting our minds to nature. And then I think this is the final one, although I'm sure there are some sitting around here that I've forgotten about. But this is Around the World in 80 Plants. This is another one that I think is a good like coffee table or bathroom type book. But this is just like each section is just on a different plant. So it's like, oh, I'm just gonna spend some time reading about clovers today. And it's 2 pages long. So you can sit down and just kind of read through the different pages here. Tulips, 1 page, just getting some quick information on the different plants. So I thought this was really great with all the pretty drawings and then having this just setting out on a coffee table. And then I do have some like random bookmarks thrown into some of these books, even though I have not started them yet. Now there's 2 last things I want to talk about. One of them is magazines. I did subscribe to 2 magazines. I forgot where I saw like I got a discount on it, but I did Better Home and Gardens, which I think comes once a month or once every 2 months, and then I did Horticultural Magazine, which I think maybe that one comes once every 2 or 3 months. But I've loved them both. I think Better Homes and Gardens, there's a lot more about the home that I'm interested in, whereas the Horticulture Magazine is all horticulture, and I've got some really great ideas from that. So I'd also recommend, if you do like magazines, subscribing to at least Horticultural Magazine. And then lastly, what I want to show you is this that I got from one of the places I got one of the other books. I can't remember now, but it is basically, well, first of all, it's just really pretty, but it is full of blank pages. And I want to fill up these pages and make it my garden journal for the year. So something I want to do, which I haven't done yet, and I need to because even if it's cold, I think it is still nice to get outside, but I want to just kind of sit through and similar to like the other garden journal that I showed you, just draw some pictures, write some things down, whatever I'm feeling like being out in the garden at that time, write it down in here. I do have a separate book for my pressed flowers, but maybe I'll even add some pressed flowers into this book too, but that's what I want to do with this. And then I think it would be really fun just to keep and look back on. Depending on if I filled this all up in 1 year, which I don't know if I would either just do 1 year in this book and get a new book for a following year, or do like a couple years worth in this book. But that is my plan for this that I'm hoping I stick to. I do feel like reading for me, especially during the summer when there's so much other stuff going on, it's hard for me to really sit down and find time to read a good chunk of a book or write in a journal. Definitely if I'm outside, because I'll be sitting there and then I will look and I'll say, hey, I need to do that thing in the garden. And then an hour's gone by as I do that garden task and I haven't actually read the book. So that is something that I want to improve upon this year, is I want to set aside more time for reading, especially in the garden. I want to get some like lighting outside so that I can spend time even in like the evening when the sun is going down out there just reading. And I think that'll be really fun. But like I said, I'll kind of show you a look at the couch so you can see what's laying around me. It's not like I have like hundreds of books, but I need to get through the books I have before I just keep getting more. But I did mention one of my friends, her grandma passed recently, and she loved to garden, and she has a ton of garden books. So my friend is gonna give me some of them, the ones that she doesn't want to keep for herself and her family. So I do have more books coming. I am excited because I assume that they will be older books and not necessarily newer books. So things that will be more unique and that I can probably learn a lot from. So I'll show you those once they get here. But that is my book collection. I will say if there's a really good book that you like, write it down below, even though I'm trying not to get any more books right now, but I might have to pick some up. Or if you've read any of these and you really like them, let me know too. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. These are the books. Again, not a huge number overall, but I should probably get through them before I get any more.